Welcome to our webinar, My Home is Someone's Workplace, What You Should Know If You Hire a House Cleaner. My name is Amalia Torrentes. I'm the Employer Education Consultant with New York City Chapter at Hand in Hand. I'm going to give it over to Olivan to give us the instructions for interpretation. Olivan, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. This is Olvin Kaba speaking. I will be your interpreter this evening. It's a pleasure being here with all of you tonight. If you are a monolingual speaker of English, meaning you only speak English, please make sure to select the interpretation option once it has been activated. That will happen shortly. Once you select the English room, please remain in the English room for the duration of the session. That way you will be able to hear all of the interpretation if anyone in the session speaks in Spanish. If you are joining from a PC, you will just need to go to the very bottom.
I think somebody assigned Olivan to his room. Jimena, do you want to continue on with the interpretation instructions?
Sure. So once you are in the, and I apologize for that, please make sure to select the interpretation option once it has been activated. So once you select the English room, stay there for the duration of the session. If you're joining from a PC, please go to the globe on the bottom right-hand side of the Zoom screen. If you're joining via tablet or a phone, please go to the bottom right-hand side and click on the ellipsis, 3 dots. Once there, click on the word more and the interpretation option will appear. Please enjoy tonight's program. I will say the same thing in Spanish. Buenas noches a todos. Será usted un intérprete, Olvin será el intérprete esta noche. Es un placer estar aquí. Si es hablante monolingual de español, lo que significa que solo habla español, asegúrese de seleccionar la opción de interpretación una vez que se haya activado. Sé que van a ver el globo en la parte de abajo de sus pantallas si están en computadora. Si están en teléfono, van a ver en la parte inferior derecha y hagan clic en los puntos suspensivos. Una vez ahí, hagan clic sobre la palabra more o más y aparecerá la opción de interpretación. Disfruten esta noche.
Thank you, Jimena, for your technical support tonight. And thank you for all our team who made this possible. Welcome to a webinar, My Home is Someone's Workplace, What You Should Know If You Hire a House Cleaner. My name is Amalia Torrentes, and I'm the Employer Education Consultant with the New York City Chapter at Hand in Hand, the Domestic Employers Network, a membership-based organization of domestic employers working to transform the care sector along domestic worker organizations. Tonight, we are excited to be partnering with Make the Road Safe and Just Cleaners Project. Their research project collects data on household cleaners, chemical exposures, and other working conditions to improve the safety and health of Latinx household cleaners. This webinar, What You Should Know When Hiring a House Cleaner, is part of our series, My Home is Someone's Workplace. This is a 1 hour and 10-minute webinar. House cleaners are domestic workers who are overwhelmingly immigrant women of color. They are the workers who make our homes look nice, clean, and organized. Domestic work continues to be a workforce that is invisible. House cleaners work in isolating and unfair working conditions. We'll hear tonight what we can do to improve those conditions. They will be sharing information that every employer of household cleaners needs to know. Joining us from Make the Road is Daisy Flores, Supervisor of the Workers' Health and Safety Program, Luisa Cuautel, Campaign Associate, Flaviana Linares, the house cleaner from La Super Cleaners, and Ana Gonzalez, Outreach and Research Associate. Welcome to everyone who is joining us. Gracias a todos que están aquí. We have set up simultaneous interpretation in Spanish for language justice. A las personas que están ingresando, por favor, darle clic al globo para que asciendan a la interpretación. It's rare to find a space focused on domestic employers. This is a unique space catering to your needs. I want to make sure you feel comfortable participating in our webinar. You will be able to connect with each other, staff, and presenters. Would you please put the following in the chat: your name, your location, why you decided to hire a house cleaner, or why you are thinking about hiring one, and if you are a house cleaner, what do you enjoy about your job? So I'm just going to give folks a couple of minutes to put that in the chat: your name, the location, why you decided to hire a house cleaner, and if you're a house cleaner, share what you enjoy about your job. And if anyone wants to participate by taking themselves off of mute, we can allow 2 people to introduce themselves. Lisa from New York City, she said she decided to hire a house cleaner because she doesn't have enough time during the week to keep the house clean and do her work. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing. If anybody wants to come off mute, Adriana, you can come off mute. Tatiana says she hired a house cleaner very sporadically, and for her it was important that the person she employs has living wages and works with safe conditions. Thank you, Lisa and Tati. And I want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable participating. Please put your answers in the chat. Feel free to ask questions. This is your space and we're here for you.
I believe Adriana wants to say something.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes. Hi.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I was having a hard time with the mute. Yes, I hired a house cleaner because my husband and I would fight all the time because we just didn't have enough time. We had young children and we both worked and we didn't have enough time to also deep clean the house. We could tidy, but we could never quite get clean. And so that was the way that we decided to keep our marriage strong and keep our work strong, was to add another person who would help us in the house.
Thank you so much for sharing, Adriana. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. So our goals for tonight is to be able to learn about working conditions of house cleaners in New York City and also about best practices when hiring a cleaner. And hand in hand, we recognize how confusing it is to be an employer, and we hope to engage and raise awareness about working conditions and encourage you to make a difference in your home or workplace for domestic workers. We'll be learning about the status of house cleaners in New York City as we continue living in a pandemic, and also best practices when hiring a house cleaner, including how to create a healthier and safer home during COVID-19, and how toxic chemicals in cleaning products may be harmful to your home. Before I pass the mic on to our sisters from Make the Road, I want to quickly introduce Hand in Hand. We're a national network of employers of nannies, house cleaners, and home attendants. We believe that it benefits everyone when our homes and workplaces are just, fair, and kind. Hand in Hand was founded in 2010 by domestic employers who drew on their own experiences of confusion and isolation in trying to figure out how to be good employers. We know that in this sector, the relationships we form with workers in our homes is one of deep interdependence, and we need each other. We understand that employers need help navigating the pathway for how to be a fair employer. There are multiple agencies you have to speak to in order to know how to be compliant. There are also things the law doesn't address, for example, vacation days or how to have difficult conversations when something goes wrong. Hand in Hand offers support, educational resources, and a community. Thank you, Daisy, Luisa, Fabiana, and Anna for joining us tonight. Research in the domestic worker industry is so rare. We're excited about this presentation. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Amalia. We're so happy to be here and to partnering with Hand in Hand to have this space and to talk to your members. And this is such an exciting event for us. So thank you for the invitation as well. Before passing the mic to Luisa, who's going to be presenting our research findings, I'm going to be doing a brief introduction about our research project, but also about the work that Make Your Own New York does. So to give you some context, the Safe and Just Cleaners research project is a community participatory research study, and we were able to get funding from NIHS to support this research. It's a 5-year study. We're already on the last year of our research project. Could you go to the previous one, Lisa? So the main goal of this study has been understanding the exposure to cleaning chemicals and disinfectants among Latinx and immigrant household cleaners in New York City and Westchester, and also trying to find ways to reduce exposure to future health in order to reduce future health impacts. So most of the research activities have been in order related to understanding exposures to chemicals, but also at the same time, we were able to capture information about the working conditions of these workers in New York, and that's what we're going to be presenting to you tonight. And also, we had the opportunity to get additional funding from NIHS to measure the impact of COVID-19 on these workers, and you will get also some insights about that. The next one. Just to briefly mention and acknowledge our research partners, this study has been done in collaboration with Queens College and the City University of New York. We're working closely with Dr. Sherry Baron, Isabel Cuervo, and also Josie Cruz, who is our research assistant at Make the Road. I'm the co-principal investigator. Ana Gonzalez, who's here as well, is our outreach and research associate, and Luisa Cuadrell is our campaign associate. And at the Icahn School of Medicine, we also have a team working there that is led by Omero Harari, who's also our co-principal investigator. Next one. So just to quickly give you a brief introduction to the work that Make Your Own New York does. Make Your Own New York is a nonprofit organization that is based here in New York, and it basically works towards building the power of the Latinx and working class communities to achieve dignity and justice. And we do this through organizing, through policy innovation, transformative education, and survival services. And we also have been doing a lot of work around health and safety. And this research project is part of our health and safety program. Next. So you will hear a lot about our super cleaners. They are actually the protagonists of this work. We were able to build a relationship with these workers, and some of them are joining here this webinar. I'm so happy to see some of them here tonight joining us. They've been not only participating of the study, but actively getting involved the organizing work that Make Your Own New York does. And these are the leaders of the Super Cleaners group, and you will hear more about the activities that we've been doing with them as well. So I'll pass it to you, Luisa, to present our research findings.
Thank you, Daisy, and thank you, Amalia and Hand in Hand for having us here today. I'm really excited to present the findings of our research. Like Daisy said, we have 2 different studies. We have the main parent study and then the smaller COVID-19 supplemental study. And so first I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the parent study, right? We have a lot of information, so I'm gonna ask for you to please hold your questions to the end, or if you want to not forget them, put them in the chat, but we'll address them towards the end. So within our parent study, we surveyed 402 household cleaners about health and working conditions, and this was completed in February of 2020. And so with this information, we were able to gather who is the cleaners that we hire, right? And so we were able to find that on average, cleaners within our study are 45 years old, ranging between 21 and 78. They live in Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island, Manhattan. All of them are immigrants living in the US on average of 16 years. 38% are uncomfortable with English. 44% are considered the primary family wage earner. And just to follow up on that, 88% lived in poverty. So what that essentially means is that their income was less than $1,500 per month, which is considered below the 2020 federal poverty line. We also realize that many of them are precariously employed, meaning that their job is informal, self-employed, and considered part-time. And as we move down the presentation, we'll see how this presents itself in problems for our cleaners. So working condition findings, right? What the main takeaway that we want you to have from this slide is that household cleaning is mostly conducted alone, part-time, in multiple homes, and without formal or written contract, and is often low paid. And at the end, we're going to have recommendations for how to alleviate some of these concerns that we have for cleaners. 93% had no formal written contract. 76% were self-employed. 49% experienced wage theft and are being paid within the minimum wage at some point. On average, 22 hours is what our cleaners work, meaning that they have on average 3 different clients per week. 25% of those working at least 6 hours for a single client were not allowed to have a 30-minute lunch break um, and that's actually illegal, right? Like we all know that once you've worked for 6 hours, you're allowed to have a 30-minute lunch break. Again, the situation can get very murky because there is no written formal contract, because they're considered self-employed. So these are, difficult circumstances, and these are just some of the working conditions that we found. Other related work conditions are that our cleaners, 27% complained of skin rash that improves when they are away from work, and this possibly related to the exposure that they have to the chemicals in the cleaning supplies. 74, complained of some eye irritation while working, and 62 reported experiencing musculoskeletal pain during the previous months that last longer than a day. And as you can see, this is more than likely related to the positions that they are using while they're cleaning. So now let's get into health protections, right? So we realized that 49% of our cleaners were not covered with health insurance. In comparison, this is comparing to the 12% of New York City residents who are not covered by health insurance. And then in the US, that's only 8%. So as you can compare the numbers, 49% is really high. 85% did not receive any paid sick leave. And as you can tell also, this is really, really important and very difficult during the pandemic, during the peak of the pandemic, right? 46% felt that they could not take a sick day, paid or unpaid, without reprisal. So these are some attitudes that we are encouraging our cleaners to have conversations about with their employers to see if we can help improve these situations. And again, 49% lacked health coverage. So now let's get into cleaning products used and attitudes, right? So the products that our cleaners are using to clean. Many commercial household cleaning products contain chemicals that can be harmful to health, and most cleaners are aware of this. Our cleaners have actually gone through a few trainings and have learned about the proper way to use certain cleaning supplies. And so they're aware of this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they can create much change, because through our research findings, we realized that 68% of cleaners reported that employers almost always choose the cleaning products, and 23% reported that sometimes they're allowed to choose. So in most cases, they're not the ones making the decisions about the supplies that they use. 52% reported that it was unnecessary to use strong chemical products when doing their work. And more than 50% of household cleaners use cleaning products containing quaternary ammonia compounds, also known as quacks, or bleach, chemicals known to cause respiratory health problems. So a little bit of information about quacks and bleach. They have been tied to chronic respiratory problems and irritation of skin, mucous membranes, and eyes. So you can tell that exposure to these things across the years can be very dangerous. Let's continue on to our key findings. Household cleaning is mostly conducted alone, part-time, in multiple homes without a formal written contract and low paid. Many cleaners in our study do not earn more than enough income to cover basic expenses. They experience high levels of income insecurity and oftentimes live below the federal poverty level. On average, they are far less likely to have health insurance than other populations. And we saw that with the numbers of 49% of them not having health insurance and also not having access to paid sick leave, right? Many commercial household cleaning products contain chemicals that can be harmful to health, and most cleaners are aware of this, right? But as they are aware of this, most of them are not able to change these things, right? So it's important to have these conversations. Um, so now let's get into the COVID-19 supplemental study. This is the second part of the study, the smaller part of the study that was actually just completed last June in 2021. And so the aim of this study was to estimate the rate of COVID-19 during the first year of the pandemic, estimate health and social economic impacts, and develop training and communication material to promote safer cleaning during the pandemic, right? And so what was done for this study was a telephone survey that was conducted between March 2021 and June 2021. And this meant that we had 296 participants in total, which is 74% of the first study. What we were able to find is that 54% reported that they had COVID. 61% had reported that they had household members with COVID, and 51% reported that they knew family friends who died from COVID-19. If you compare these numbers to the general population, you will be able to tell that our cleaners were disproportionately affected by COVID-19. And to get even further into this, what we were able to find, we were able to send antibody tests to our cleaners so that they could take the test to see if they had COVID at some point. And the antibodies came back reactive in 57% of the specimens, right? 78% amongst these were self-reported positive, and 27% of these were self-reported negative. So in total, the amount of people who actually had been positive for COVID-19 was actually between the numbers of 60 and 70, which was not what we had originally thought over here. So cleaners' use of disinfecting cleaning products. We surveyed this again in the second study, especially because we suspected that there was a rise of disinfectants used at work because of all the marketing by all the cleaning supplies to use disinfectants to protect against COVID. We suspected that there would be increased use of disinfectants, and that's actually what we found, right? So 59 reported using more disinfectants at work, 65% reported using more disinfectants in their own home. Some said that the most important thing in feeling satisfied with your cleaning is reducing germs. Before COVID, those numbers were 14, and after COVID, that rose to 37. Now let's talk about stigma, right? Stigma at work. 47%, if diagnosed with COVID-19, would feel likely or somewhat likely to feel embarrassed or afraid to actually disclose this information to your employer. So we're going to get into this down the road, but what this really shows us is that there needs to be stronger relationships between employers and household cleaners, right? So that household cleaners feel comfortable sharing this information. And it's not just household cleaners sharing this information, but it's also asking employers to be honest about when they have been exposed to COVID so that it's a mutual relationship. Similar rates amongst those with and without history of COVID-19 infection. COVID's impact on work. So what this showed us is that 29% worked during the shutdown, 78% continued house cleaning after June 2020, most with reduced hours, 64% couldn't take sick leave, paid or unpaid, during the pandemic without retaliation. 100% of our participants, and so this is going to be compared to the numbers that we saw in the first study, which the numbers before were 88. Now they've increased to 100%, right? In the second study, we've realized that 100% of participants who were primary family wage earner reported living within federal poverty level threshold. Give me 1 second. Okay, so let's talk about housing insecurity. 5% showed that they had no fixed place to live, 40% worried about whether they will have a place to live, and 24% owed more than $1,000 in back rent as a result of the pandemic and the effects. Food insecurity, 86 had been food insecure, 36% had extreme food insecurity. And now related to security in the home, 17% felt that they were unsafe in their home, 12% had someone with whom they had romantic relationships yell at them or said things that made them feel scared or bad about themselves, and 21% suffered from either form of insecurity. Um, so now related to health outcomes, oh, we could see on this graph that the levels of depression, stress, and self-reported health actually increase from before the pandemic and after the pandemic. And these are the numbers that we had suspected, right? We had suspected that our cleaners levels of depression would raise, the levels of stress would raise, and the levels of self-reported would also increase. And this is just what we had thought, and now we actually have the numbers to show that. So those are our findings. And so now we're going to get a little bit into like how we have been turning our research findings into action. And so we're going to take a look at this social ecological model where we're showing that we are doing things on different levels, right? So we're demanding policies, and we're going to get into what these policies are. We're organizing our super cleaners, like Daisy had mentioned earlier. We're organizing with other organizations and other networks to continue spreading the word. We're also providing educational activities to make sure that our cleaners feel that they're also prepared to have these conversations with their employers, right? And so let's talk about organizing successes. Two examples of things that actually happened last year are the Fund for Excluded Workers campaign and the Cancel Rent campaign. Both campaigns were successes. With the Excluded Workers campaign, the state awarded $2.1 billion for economic support for immigrant workers who were considered essential, who were people who were continuing working during the pandemic, or people who had lost hours of work and couldn't qualify for regular unemployment because of their immigration status. And as for the Cancel Rent campaign, the Make the Road is part of the Housing for All coalition, and what that ended up becoming was we secured money that covered up to 12 months of back rent or utility bills, and these both campaigns were really, really helpful for our members, the members of our community. Another example of something that we're actually still working on that unfortunately did not pass this year was Coverage for All. Coverage for All actually would help with that statistic of the 49% of people that don't have health insurance, right? So Coverage for All is asking for the state to allocate $345 million a year to provide health insurance program for people who are undocumented and normally wouldn't qualify for health insurance. And so we're still working on that. We actually weren't successful in passing that this year, but we're hoping that next year we actually can do that. We're organizing amongst campaigns, but we're also organizing our household cleaners. And as you can see here, this is a picture of a cleaners during a workshop at one of our in-person meetings back in 2019 before the pandemic. Another successful thing that's happened as a result of the organizing, we've created educational videos in Spanish aimed at other cleaners so that they can talk about how they have recommendations for cleaning and things like that. Other things that we're doing is working with other networks such as the Cancer Free Economy Network, and where we've launched the Household Cleaners Health and Safety Lab last June. And through this lab, we're actually working on creating a set of videos to reduce the use of disinfectants for other, and these videos are actually going to be aimed at employers. So they're going to be educational videos that employers can use to learn more about, how to reduce the use of disinfectants. What's the importance of doing that? What are some harms that are coming from the constant use of disinfectants? And this is work that we've actually been doing and working with hand in hand that just started this year. And so now we're going to talk about the resources. So we have access to our both our reports in English and Spanish, and those are actually on our website. So feel free to look at our website. And we're actually creating these videos that I had mentioned earlier. So please stay tuned for those videos aimed at employers. And that is actually all. Wait, here we are. It was missing the most important slide, the recommendations for employers and how you can help. So these are some recommendations that we've actually come up with, which we are saying that we recommend for employers to provide PPE for protection. So this is gloves and masks for their cleaners, to establish and build intentional relationships with employees with transparent communication, to have contracts and salaries, to open education around cleaning supplies, to get involved in organizing such as Coverage for All, to reduce the use of disinfectants at home, consider the health outcomes of using these chemicals, not only on cleaners' health, but also on your family's health. And the last and most important thing is that allowing for ventilation in your home when you have a cleaner, right? Because these chemicals are harmful, and so ventilation would allow to reduce the exposure to these chemicals. Here are resources, and this is the end of our presentation. Thank you, guys. Let me go ahead and mute myself now.
Thank you, Daisy and Luisa, for presenting your research, because work from the industry takes place behind closed doors. We don't have a large overview of what's going on as a whole. Your research as a whole gives us new light and actually reveals areas where employers' practices can be improved to create a safer workplace for house cleaners. I'm going to invite Donna. Actually, are you guys still sharing your screen?
Yes, Luisa is. So Luisa, you can stop sharing your screen now.
Donna, based on your experience as an employer of a nanny and more recently a house cleaner, what are your reflections about Make the Road study?
Hi there, everybody, and thanks for inviting me to share some of my perspectives and our experiences. So my name is Donna Schneiderman, and I've been a member of Hand in Hand, the Domestic Employers Network, since it was founded over 10 years ago. And I helped advocate for New York State's Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, which is the first state to have passed a bill in the country. That too was about 12 years ago. My husband and I, as Amalia said, we had employed a nanny for our daughters when they were little for over 10 years. And we've employed a wonderful house cleaner to care for our home for 20 years now. And we're very grateful for her work. I first got involved in the domestic workers movement, domestic worker rights movement, as an employer looking for standards and guidelines. I recognized that our home was someone's workplace, and it wasn't clear to me what it meant to be an employer in our own home. So we've always tried to do the right thing, but often realize that the right thing is subjective. And that's why standards are important, why we need standards. Standards that are set by the industry and taking into consideration the house cleaner's experience and the value of the work that the work brings to our home. We've aimed to look at our home as someone else's workplace. And in doing so, I feel that's demonstrated respect for our house cleaner who we employ and appreciation for her work, the value that it brings to all of us in the family. And we do this by paying her a fair wage, ensuring she can take a sick day when needed, as well as vacation time. So we also ensure that we provide cleaning products that she prefers and that are low toxicity. So while we aim to do our best as employers, it's been a process over the years. We're still learning, and we're still trying to improve our workplace and our practices. For example, we didn't have an agreement in place until just recently. And in doing so, I found that the conversation that was prompted by the agreement was helpful to both of us, to the person who cleans our home and to us. Because even though I always thought we had a good, mutually respectful relationship over the years, the discussion related to the work agreement helped us focus our attention on her and the work that she does. It sort of centered her and the value of the work. So I regretted that it took so long for us to state on paper and in a conversation the importance of her work and our commitment to protecting her well-being by providing a good wage and flexibility to care for herself when she needs to. I'm confident that we've worked it out so that if either of us need to change the agreement or the responsibilities outlined in agreement, that we could do that together and have a good conversation. So I'm grateful to our house cleaner because she provides, or rather she ensures that our home is well cared for, despite the long weeks that my husband and I work. She's able to see details that I would overlook. And most of all, our home is more peaceful the days that she's caring for our home. And when we come home, we walk in the door and it's just like a whole other place. Domestic work truly makes other work possible. So as an employer, I feel like I play an important part in the industry as we set standards for other employers. And I just want to like call out a couple things that I found as good takeaways from the study that was presented. Having the work agreement is super important, as I mentioned already, because it helps not only reinforce a sense of respect and appreciation and the value for the person's work, but it also helps contribute towards improving standards across the industry and elevating respect generally for the work, recognizing that it's important work. I was really surprised when I went through the study and heard again tonight. I was really surprised by the small number of people who have agreements in place. And I was one of them till just recently. I see this as a really important area to focus on as we aim to improve standards and raise awareness for the importance of work agreements. Also, I appreciate the insight into the importance of selecting non-toxic cleaning products, something that we've aimed to do, but I've learned a lot of new things this evening about some very traditional household cleaning products that can cause rashes and things like that. So I aim to take a closer look at that in our home. So thank you very much, Make the Road. This was really a terrific presentation. I wanted to move on to just a couple of tips that I've learned along the way that we thought might be helpful for those to hear. First of all, good communication takes time and constant engagement. Take the time, even from the hiring process on, to get to know the person who you are employing. Give feedback, both positive and constructive. Communication is two ways. It's not just expressing one's own needs, but it's also taking the time to listen to the needs of the domestic worker being employed. So I have to recognize also that there's a power dynamic at play. And this power dynamic, it's really rooted in this slavery when you get down to it. And so like, it's all of our responsibility to address that and to look at how our homes can be equitable workplaces. And that starts by listening and providing space for the individual's input and expertise. So the other thing, second, to be clear about is your expectations at work. The clearer we can be about our work expectations, the better the work will be. Sometimes communication will have challenges. We may have language barriers, for example, and it's important to try to bridge those barriers by providing information in the house cleaner's preferred language, or use Google Translate if you need to translate to help communicate. Workers are very understanding and gracious when we try to communicate in their language. And remember, we hire the cleaners who we employ because of their skills. In terms of responsibility under the law, we're supposed to have postings about the current laws in our homes, and they make them available in all languages. So that's something to consider. So we encourage folks here tonight to share in the chat how you communicate with the worker who you employ in your home, especially if they speak a different language. Feel free to post something here in the chat if you'd like. Third, it's important to set up a work agreement. We've talked about that already. This might be the first time some of you are hearing about a work agreement. Usually, when we come to a job, it has structure, some policies, benefits in place. It may even have an HR department. In our home, we have to figure this out on our own, and that's where it's challenging. Hand in Hand has created a sample work agreement for us, which is very helpful. There are many different agreements, but Hand in Hands are informed by the worker's experience and take into consideration that employers must be compliant under law. Two important things I've included in my agreement is a cancellation policy. I try to avoid last minute cancellations, but if I have to, I'd still pay the person I employ because I recognize that she has set aside a specific day in her schedule to work in our home. Canceling last minute impacts her ability to plan and budget her time and also her income. So second, also important, is paid time off. Everyone gets sick and we all deserve vacation days. The domestic worker that I employ is not an exception to this. And it makes an employee feel valued when you are able to provide paid time off, especially if they need it. There aren't many resources out there for domestic employers of cleaners, nannies, and elder care workers. And even though at some point in all of our lives, we'll be needing care, we live in a world where we have to figure out how to deal with this on our own. Hand-in-hand guidelines and resources help me better structure our work arrangement in a way that acknowledges our home is her workplace, and we value the work of our house cleaner. The last item I want to leave you with is to take the Fair Care Pledge. It's our commitment to household employers to pay a living wage, have clear expectations, and provide paid time off. And you can find that also on the Hand-in-Hand website. So thank you very much for allowing me to share these perspectives.
Thank you, Donna. That was really great. I appreciate you sharing your experiences. I'm going to welcome Flaviana. Thank you, Flaviana, for joining us. She's one of the super cleaners for Make the Road, and we're excited to hear about your fair workplace experience.
Sí, hola, muy buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Flaviana Linares y he trabajado en el área de la limpieza por los últimos 5 años. Y lo que me gusta a mí de trabajo que yo hago, definitivamente es la flexibilidad que los empleadores tienen para conmigo. Yo trabajo en diferentes casas, apartamentos, entonces lo que me gusta es eso, de que yo puedo escoger los horarios, y ellos aceptan. Entonces, esa es una de las cosas de las cuales me encanta el trabajo. Y lo otro también es que me da la oportunidad de poder aprender en estos talleres con la organización Se Hace Camino en Nueva York, de todo lo que nos ha venido enseñando a lo largo de estos años. Y eso me ha ayudado a mí para sentirme empoderada y también seguir empoderando a más trabajadoras de limpieza para así poder a nosotras mismas defender nuestros derechos, ¿no? Entonces, otra de las cosas de las cuales me gusta es que he podido balancear entre el trabajo, los horarios de trabajo y poder organizar, poder apoyar todas estas campañas que hemos venido luchando. Algunas hemos ganado, algunas no, pero seguimos en pie de lucha. Y otra de las cosas que me gusta de algunos empleadores, no voy a decir que de todos los que yo tengo, pero sí me gusta que cuando yo voy a trabajar, si ellos me dan la flexibilidad y la confianza de decir, no estoy en casa, pero tú bien puedes entrar, solo avísame cuando tú sales y yo mandarte el pago, porque hoy en día todo va electrónico, o me dejas el pago. Eso es una de las cosas de las cuales a mí me gusta. ¿Por qué? Porque yo estoy trabajando por un salario para cubrir el día a día. Entonces, hay muchísimas cosas que a mí me gustaría que mejoraran, pero sé que no se hace todo este trabajo de la noche a la mañana. Entonces, otra de las cosas que a mí me gusta hacer lo que hago es que cuando uno va a trabajar, uno disfruta el trabajo, cuando nadie anda tras de uno, ¿no? Uno va a su ritmo, uno ya sabe lo que tiene que hacer y el trabajo habla por sí solo. Entonces, yo ahora estoy escuchando que ya debemos de trabajar con un contrato por escrito, lo cual voy a tratar de ponerlo en práctica, pero con la comunidad que yo trabajo no sé si pueda lograrlo. Haré el intento porque muchas de las veces me toca ir a trabajar y resulta que yo solo hago vía texto. Ok, voy a trabajar limpieza regular, que es sin mover muebles, no es limpieza profunda. Si es limpieza regular, significa que solo voy a limpiar en las áreas donde lo básico. No voy a estar moviendo muebles, camas, limpiar las alfombras debajo de las camas, mover detrás de los muebles. Entonces, eso sí lo especifico, porque si yo tengo que hacer esa limpieza profunda, significa que eso es otro pago. Y queremos que los empleadores estén conscientes y si no, nosotros educarlos por cuál es la diferencia entre una y otra. Entonces, si es limpieza normal, es un precio, y si es limpieza profunda, es otro precio. Si es lavandería, doblar ropa, guardar, y por qué no en otras ocasiones hasta planchar, eso es otra cosa, otro precio. Entonces hay muchas cosas que sí debemos de seguir trabajando, pero a mí me gusta todos estos talleres porque aprendo muchísimo y también me sigo empoderando para poder seguir empoderando a más trabajadoras. Gracias.
Gracias, Flaviana. Agradezco mucho su participación. Thank you, Flaviana, for your participation. We'll be having a hand-in-hand member share on the impact of positive feedback. Lisa, you have the floor. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us tonight.
Okay, hello, I'm Lisa Bernstein, and I just wanted to tell this story because it was a good moment. Well, I'll just tell the story. I had hired Gladys to clean my house once a week when I was at work and my kids were at school. And actually on days that she would clean, I would often go home with like an eagle eye, noticing what she had missed, and would sometimes leave her a short note saying something like, please remember to do the mirror in the hallway, with like a gracias and at the bottom. And we only communicated by notes because I was at work when she was in my home. And I basically in those notes told her what was wrong, what she had missed, what to do next. But I noticed after the first year, it felt like Gladys was losing interest and was a little bit less thorough. And my husband and I had actually discussed finding someone new when it occurred to me that a clean and organized house kept me sane and kept me at work and my family functioning. Yet I had never told Gladys how and why her work mattered to me or my family. And since I rarely saw her in person, without meaning to, I had started treating her like an invisible helper to be directed instead of as a much valued employee to be appreciated. So how can I expect Gladys to do her best work if I only ever noticed or communicated with her about her mistakes? Instead, I started writing notes that were still simple because my Spanish is muy horrible and her English was not so great. But I just started telling her thank you and why her cleaning, washing, and straightening mattered to her lives. And then just as I had learned to tell my children when they had done something great instead of just noticing when they were messing up, it became really important to tell my kids to notice that Gladys had made our lives better and have them notice things that she had done that made our house and our lives easier. And at one point, my daughter and I, when she was 5, wrote a note thanking her for washing the dolls in her bedroom, and my daughter decorated it and signed it. And I wrote her another note thanking her because she had found my husband's lost tie inside his shoe. We still don't know how it got there. She really never wrote back more than gracias and maybe something about, you know, what we needed or whatever, but it just felt like we were people again. And so one day when I was home and she was there, I think I realized, and she realized too, that we had both changed our attitude and that we had a lot more in common as working mothers than we had different, and that and anyway, we ended up having a very funny conversation in my bad Spanish and her not so great English, but it was really like the beginning of a relationship that changed the whole way we work together, and that lasted for 10 more years. And I think, to me, it's part of what led for me to be here, and it's also part of why, as a feminist, I think it's really important that we look at the women that make us as women able to live and do well and raise our families, and that we do the same and turn around for one another. And so that's why I think to be thankful, and not in some silly gratitude way, but to genuinely be thankful for the care and the help that we receive from other women is important, and why I support helping other women who clean my home to get the rights that they deserve and need. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa and Flaviana. What you guys have shared is incredibly powerful, because it shapes your stories are going to shape the industry. So thank you so much. And if anybody else wants to share their experiences, you guys can share them in the chat.
Hi, Maria. I just wanted to add that we found out actually that through our research that what Donna is saying and Lisa is also sharing, it's connected to the fact that household cleaners truly appreciate getting positive feedback, and it has a direct impact on their mental health as well. Reducing stress levels and pressure levels is connected to being valued at work, which it happens at any industry. So this industry is also, it's the same case. They're workers and feeling appreciated and having good feedback and positive feedback about the work that they are doing, being considerate and not being invisible. It's something that definitely makes such a difference. And I truly appreciated, Lisa, you sharing that as well. So just want to mention that. And the other thing is that something that we share also through our research findings and that we are emphasizing is that it is not actually needed to use that many disinfectants as a household setting. And for house cleaning, something that we've been working around with workers is understanding better how harmful these strong chemicals can be for these workers, but also for the employers and their families. So disinfecting properly is something that should happen after cleaning, and only at specific settings or highly touched areas, or when there are immunocompromised individuals within the house. Otherwise, it's not actually necessary. So avoiding the use of those strong chemicals in a house, it's something that is beneficial for the workers, but also for anyone that is living at the house. Unfortunately, the pandemic we have the evidence through our research, but the pandemic, what did, it was pushing everyone to increase the use of disinfectants, just because everyone was very afraid of the virus and getting infected. But there is a misunderstanding about how to use it, where to use it, and where. So that's something that we are emphasizing those messages, because the same way that we are concerned about workers getting better working conditions and get treated well, we're also concerned about their health. And we found that there are some health adverse outcomes when it comes to longer term exposure to these strong chemicals.
Thank you, Daisy, for sharing that. And I want to thank Make the Road, because through their partnership, we were able to develop best practices for hiring a house cleaner. And I just want to show everyone where they're able to find that. So once you go to the Hand in Hand website, you can, our specific information is based in New York. So we're going to go to where it says New York. And then head over to where it has employer resources. And there's actually a specific section where we've developed these brand new resources, best practices for hiring a housekeeper and a house cleaner. And the reason we included a housekeeper was because a lot of times they're the extended version of the house cleaner, doing laundry, doing cooking, and working longer hours. So once you can access our best practices, and our best practices are going to include value the domestic worker you employ at home, make a plan for the hiring process, don't wing your questions because you may actually violate discrimination laws. You really want to keep it to asking about their experiences, their skills, what their services doesn't exclude, either their preferences or references, but don't ask about their salary history or pregnancy status or credit history. You want to stay away from those things. And as Daisy said, only 93% of employers have an agreement, and we want to change that. And the reason why you want to have these things in writing is because you want to avoid miscommunication, but most of all, you want to avoid exploitation, because domestic workers have rights and they have protections. And so we want to make sure that we are changing the industry by making sure that we are treating the domestic workers we employ by paying them a fair wage. Minimum wage is the minimum, but you should be paying at least $30 an hour for a shift of about 3 to 5 hours. That's the recommendation. You can't live on minimum wage. You have to live on a living wage. And a living wage is going to include their housing, their food, their travel to and from work, and the materials that they use. So you want to be able to pay your the worker you employ a living wage as opposed to minimum wage. You have to also realize the laws that cover domestic workers, like paid, safe, and sick leave. As was said in the presentations, over 30% of workers don't feel comfortable asking for a sick day, but in reality, the law requires all domestic workers have a right to paid sick leave. So you want to make sure that you're providing the worker you employ sick leave. We all get sick. It's just the right thing to do. And you might want to provide to them paid time off because we all deserve a vacation as well. It's just a part of being a fair employer. So I want to make sure that you guys are taking advantage of all the resources which are free and downloadable on the Hand in Hand website. You're going to find the written work agreement. What's great about the agreement is that it actually walks you through all of the different laws, including the overtime rate, including workers' compensation and paid family leave. You want to make sure that you're being compliant with all the different laws, but it also covers benefits like vacations, and it also covers like good communication, like when you're going to be meeting with the worker you employ to speak with them, to give them feedback. It just helps you create structure and helps you think about all the different things that you need to put in place to make your home an actual workplace. And we know that can be really difficult, so we want to make sure that you're able to take advantage of those things. And you can just click on here on the work agreement and you'll be able to access all of those resources. Again, they're just free and downloadable. So it's around 9:00 p.m. and we want to make sure that we respect your time. We're going to open the floor for questions and answers. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? While we're waiting for questions, I do want to let you know that Make the Road does have a follow-up event on July 25th. If you guys want to know what it is, what toxic chemicals are, how to choose good cleaning products, we will be sharing that with you guys, the link, so that you guys can RSVP. And then if you guys have any questions about the law, again, it can be really complex. We will be having a webinar August 10th on paid, safe, and sick leave, and you guys can ask any questions that you have regarding COVID-19. So I have a question for Make the Road, which is what led you guys to have this research?
That is such a good question. Actually, Make the Road New York, prior of working on this project, has been working around health and safety, doing trainings and collaborating with Queens College even before and the research started. And primarily at that time, we were working with construction workers and providing trainings to secure that they are safe at the workplace. Those trainings keep happening at Maid Road. But also after the Storm Sandy happened, there were specific trainings related to disaster preparedness and how to prepare communities that are the most impacted ones to respond to those events. So in that context, it came out this opportunity to apply to this funding through NIHS. And since Make the Road hasn't worked and has not been working very actively with household cleaners and with these workers, it was a great opportunity because as you were saying, Amalia, unfortunately, there are not that many research done like just trying to document the working conditions, trying to document the exposures to these chemicals with these specific workers. So it became an interesting and an opportunity for Make the Road to dive deep into this issue. And it was totally connected to the work that we were doing around health and safety. So that's how the collaboration started. And it's been 5 years now. We're almost at the end of the research project, but the collaboration with these workers will continue, of course.
Thank you, Daisy. And I have a question for our hand-in-hand team. A lot of employers find it difficult to implement a work agreement after they started working with a house cleaner, and the house cleaner actually thinks it's a punishment that these work agreements are being in place. So I mean, I'm gonna ask either Donna or Tatiana to share about their experiences and the conversation about implementing a work agreement with the house cleaner they employ.
Sure, I can jump in. I definitely acknowledge that it was awkward. One reason is like Lisa had mentioned, for a while we weren't in the same place at the same time. Since I've been working more at home since COVID times, there are times that we are in the same place and we have more conversations, and that sort of helped facilitate the conversation around wanting a work agreement. I've shared with the person who cleans our home, I've shared with her over the years my involvement in the domestic workers' rights movement. I've shared bits and pieces and things like that. So I sort of framed it in that context, that as I've been learning more and more about best practices for being an employer, I felt like it was important that I walk the talk and I actually live up to the standards that the organizing work that we do promotes. And I thought that, and also that as I've been talking to people, I've learned more and more about the benefits of having an agreement, and it just seemed to make sense. And I asked her if she would be open to having that conversation with me, and I would propose, I drafted something for us to talk about together and to get her input into. And so I think that helped, having those dialogues.
Thank you, Donna. And I think it goes back to having those communication moments to strengthen the workplace. It's not just positive feedback, but also in constructing your home into a workplace. So we want to make sure that house cleaners know it's a good thing when we're talking about your benefits. It's a good thing when we're talking about what you deserve in the workplace. It's a good thing when we're talking about, what happens if we do have a cancellation, and having a policy in place, so it's a good thing to have a work agreement and to talk about these things, especially because a lot of the times folks think about house cleaners as gig workers. They're just here to do a service. They're here for a couple of hours. They're maybe here once or twice a month, but you're really trying to create a relationship long term because this person is in your home. So you want to be able to create a positive work relationship with this person who you're both have an interdependence. Yes, you are paying this person, but you need this person because they have this particular skill. And a lot of the times it's not a luxury that they're cleaning your home, it's a necessity. So having that good communication and having that work agreement is a positive it's a positive thing. Like I only think about if my job didn't have an HR handbook or an employee handbook, or if that employee handbook was verbal. Like that just doesn't work. We need to be able to have something to reference back about like what are the terms of employment and what are the benefits of employment. Does anybody else have any comments, wants to speak about the research or their experience or difficulties in being in a household employer?
Well, Amalia, I think just referring to what you just mentioned is there is research to back up what you were saying. I think in terms of the downside of not having actually written agreements, it's because cleaners also reported that there is, wage theft happening, or employers that might not be as caring as the hand-in-hand members, right, that are conscious about raising the standards, and there are just employers that abuse of that informality. And that's why it's actually needed for these workers to have those agreements. So in the case those situations happen, actually organizations like Make the Road and our legal team could support them, could help them out to figure out the situation. But when there is this huge informality, it's even more difficult. So that's what we are advocating, to raising the standards. I'm so happy to actually see that Hand in Hand is fully committed to do that Hand in Hand members and the employers that are here, but also employers that are members of the organization, are caring and are trying to improve their the work that they do as employers. So I think that the research is strong in terms of backing this up, that it's important to document those agreements.
Thank you, Daisy. I have one last question based on the research that was given, which is over 30% of workers don't feel comfortable providing a sick day. So my question is, how do employers make the house cleaners they employ comfortable with taking a sick day?
Is that for us or for employers?
It can be for employers. It can be for you if you want to answer. It could be for the Hand in Hand team. Whoever wants to answer, it's open.
Well, I will say that we've talked about this before, right? Because of the informality of the industry, this is something that I feel that we need to push to raise the standards, and employers need to understand that, last minute cancellations is something that it's definitely pretty bad for cleaners, because they already schedule their time. If they feel sick and they need to take time off, they should be able to do it, and employers should compensate them for their time, because they're also workers. But I do feel that should be maybe also included on the agreements, maybe just setting up some time that could be allocated as well. That would be amazing. But that's part of the raising, the process of raising the standards. And I would like to invite, we have Gavina here, we have Flaviana, some of our leaders, maybe just to tell us why it is important for them to having access, to a paid sick leave. Most of our cleaners, they are mothers, like most of the employers as well. They have families, they are combining their work responsibilities with their life and their personal responsibilities. So for them, also having the peace of mind of having access to a paid sick leave is definitely important. So I don't know if Flaviana or Gavina or Maria would like to share something else about that. ¿Por qué sería importante para ustedes tener un pago por enfermedad, ¿no? Si es que necesitan tomar un tiempo libre por enfermedad. I'm not sure if, no sé si alguna de ustedes quiere decir algo. Si no, está bien. But I think it's definitely something to consider. The other thing that also I wanted to mention, and I think that was shared through Lisa's testimonies as well. Gavina, okay, I'm gonna go to you. Vamos, Gavina.
Buenas tardes, gracias por elegirme. Es un placer compartir con todos ustedes mi experiencia. No entendí muy bien la pregunta. Para estar segura lo que voy a contestar, ¿podría repetirla?
Claro que sí, Gavina. Es ¿por qué sería para ti y para las trabajadoras de limpieza del hogar importante tener acceso a un pago por días de enfermedad? Es decir, que si se sienten enfermas o si tienen una emergencia y no pueden ir a trabajar, ¿por qué sería importante que ese día se les compense?
Sí, gracias. Para mí es muy importante porque uno ya cuenta con ese sueldo semanal. Entonces, cuando uno tiene que cancelar por una emergencia, como que uno se desnivela la entrada de dinero a la casa. Y por eso mismo es bien importante como para no retardarme, como para no desbalancearme, como así lo puedo decir, y, y es algo justo para una trabajadora, porque creo que todos tienen ese derecho, ¿verdad? Pero nadie ha puesto a pensar en las trabajadoras domésticas. Es bien importante para mí. Gracias.
Gracias a ti, Gabina.
Gracias, Galina. So I'm not sure if people hit on the floor to understand what Gabina was saying, but she said it's very important because she counts on the income, and otherwise it makes her budget unbalanced. And it's just the right and fair thing to do, she said. So it is a 9:13, and we want to thank all of our members for being present and supporting our work in so many ways. Thank you, Make the Road, Daisy, Lisa, Fabiana, Anna, for partnering with us tonight. Thank you to all of our attendees. Again, we want to let you know that Make the Road is having a follow-up webinar on rethinking the use of toxic cleaning, as well as we're going to be having a follow-up webinar on paid sick and sick leave August 10th from 8 to 9. Thank you so much for our interpreter, Alvin, and thank you for Jimena for your technical support and for social media, spreading the word and marketing and everything. So thank you so much for everyone for being tonight, and we hope that you left more empowered, and we hope to see you in the next webinar. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Gracias.
Gracias.